June 6, 1944. The world stood on the edge of a turning point. Across the English Channel, more than 150,000 Allied soldiers prepared for the greatest seaborne assault in history. For 4 long years, Nazi forces had occupied France. Now, the liberation of Europe would begin on these shores. Inside the landing craft, young men waited in silence. The roar of engines, the crashing of waves, and the distant thunder of artillery filling the air. In just moments, the doors would open, and the fate of the free world would be decided on the beaches of Normandy. By 1944, Western Europe stood under the shadow of occupation. Along the coast of France, concrete forts, steel obstacles, and minefields formed a barrier the world would come to know as the Atlantic Wall. It was designed to make any landing costly, and if possible, impossible. Across the English Channel, the Allies prepared a different answer. To end the war in the West, they needed a foothold, one decisive entry point onto the continent. The plan was code-named Operation Overlord, an immense, carefully orchestrated gamble that would demand coordination on a scale never seen before. Months of preparation followed. Soldiers drilled on British soil, ships were gathered in hidden harbors, and aircraft were assigned to strike far beyond the beaches. In secret rooms, maps were marked and remarked, tides and moonlight studied, and the weather watched like an enemy of its own. Deception became a weapon. False armies were conjured from canvas and air, dummy tanks, wooden aircraft, phantom radio traffic, designed to suggest an invasion at Calais, far from the true objective. The aim was simple: fix the defenders in the wrong place at the crucial time. Leadership would prove critical. Orders flowed from high command, but on the sands to come, the outcome would hinge on small units and individual decisions, on men who would step forward when plans met the chaos of reality. Everything depended on timing. The tides had to be right. The wind had to break. A narrow window would open, briefly, when the sea, the sky, and the dark would align. On the far shore lay 5 code-named beaches: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. They were lines on a map, for now. Within hours, they would become the most contested ground on Earth and the starting point for the liberation of Europe. June 6th, 1944. The morning air is heavy with fear and salt. Thousands of landing crafts push through the rough waters of the English Channel, their steel hulls packed with young soldiers. Each man carries a rifle, a pack, and the silent weight of history on his shoulders. Ahead lies the coast of Normandy, 5 beaches that will decide the fate of Europe. Inside the landing crafts, the engines roar and waves crash against the metal walls. Soldiers clutch their helmets and whisper quiet prayers. Some stare down at photographs of loved ones. Others grip their weapons so tightly their knuckles turn white. The sea spray mixes with sweat and fear. For many, this will be their first and last battle. The ramps creak as the boats draw closer. The coastline appears through the mist, gray sand, jagged obstacles, and fortified bunkers carved into the cliffs. The men can already hear the distant thunder of German artillery. Every explosion sends tremors through their chests. The closer they get, the louder the chaos becomes. There is no turning back. Suddenly, the first waves of shells land in the water. Plumes of spray and fire erupt around the boats. Soldiers duck instinctively as fragments of steel and wood slash through the air. The smell of smoke fills their lungs. Officers shout orders above the deafening noise, their voices nearly lost in the storm of war. The ramps drop. The cold sea rushes in. Bullets slice through the air before a single man can step forward. Some soldiers fall instantly, struck down before even leaving the craft. Others leap into the water, plunging into the chaos with gear weighing them down. Sand and blood churn together as the beach becomes a killing ground. On Omaha Beach, the resistance is brutal. Machine guns rain death from hidden bunkers high above. Mortars explode in the surf, throwing men into the air. The cries of the wounded mix with the crash of the waves. The beach is littered with bodies, weapons, and burning debris. Every yard forward is paid for in blood. Yet, through fear and fire, the men crawl onward. They dig into the sand for cover, then surge ahead when the guns reload. Medics rush through the chaos, dragging the wounded back to safety, even as bullets snap overhead. The mission is clear. Breach the defenses, no matter the cost. The future of the free world depends on it. Hours pass, and the tide of battle begins to shift. Allied warships pound the cliffs with relentless artillery. Each thunderous strike shakes the bunkers above, collapsing concrete and silencing machine guns. The defenders, once untouchable, are now under fire from sea and sky. On the beaches, small groups of soldiers rally together. They storm the obstacles, blowing gaps in the defenses with explosives. Engineers clear mines under constant fire, carving narrow paths through the deadly sand. For the first time, the German lines begin to break. By afternoon, the Allies push beyond the beaches. Tanks rumble ashore, their tracks grinding over wreckage and craters. Infantry press forward, securing footholds in the French countryside. Smoke rises from villages as the battle spreads inland, but momentum is finally with the invaders. The cost is staggering, yet the impossible has been achieved. The Atlantic Wall has been breached. For the first time since the war began, the road to liberate Europe lies open. By nightfall, the beaches of Normandy are secured, but the cost is almost unbearable. Over 4,000 Allied soldiers lie dead, and thousands more are wounded. The sand, once pale and quiet, is stained with sacrifice, soaked with the blood of those who never returned home. For the men who survived, the memories of this day would remain forever. The screams of the wounded, the thunder of artillery, the flashes of machine guns, the sight of brothers falling into the surf, all of it carved into their minds. They had lived through hell, and yet their courage broke through the strongest defenses the Nazis had ever built. The victory on the beaches was not the end, but the beginning. Ahead lay weeks of grinding battles through hedgerows, towns, and fields, each step paid for with more lives. The Battle of Normandy was only starting, yet June 6th marked the moment the impossible became possible. The tide of war had turned, and with it came a spark of hope for millions still under occupation. From that day forward, the road to liberation stretched across Europe. Paris would rise in freedom, nations would see the enemy pushed back, and the dream of victory became real. But none of it could have happened without the sacrifice made on the beaches of Normandy. History remembers D-Day not just as a military triumph, but as a symbol of human determination. Against fear, against fire, against impossible odds, freedom took root here. And from those sands of Normandy, a continent would one day rise free again. Every day, another story unfolds. Subscribe so you never miss it.